podcast at its new time, 5:30. I'm excited to give you guys a fantastic new stream. Today is episode number 40, and I have titled this The Beauty of Collapse. And we're going to go pretty deep into what collapse is, why it's so important. A lot of people are afraid of it. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about all of that stuff. My name is Amelie. I am the founder and host of Celestic Intelligence Podcast. And normally I do this in the morning, so evening energy is a little bit different for me. I'm more of a morning person. And so this is the soonest I could do in the evening. And so I heard you guys, I allowed you guys to vote on it. And so here we are. So let's just get into the teachings. First, I probably should mention I do have a book coming out, an ebook coming out right now. It is pre-order for $5 only, and it is on leadership and nervous system of leadership. So not just our own personal leaderships, but like how we connect with one another, how the dynamics work in that, and just helping to raise awareness of the nervous system, especially since I've been doing the Digital Age podcast as well. The digital, not podcast, I should say, like an investigation. So the digital age is, a big portion of why I even wrote the book. And what I've discovered in my review of the digital age is that right now we have this digital nervous system coming through. And so it is a pretty interesting concept. The digital or synthetic nervous system is what we connect to. And so just kind of mapping out how our systems align with technology. And, it is a mimicry of our own technology, our human technology. Digital, I've been saying this for a while, but the digital technology, the AI, everything that is technology is created as a muse because of the muse of the human. So human is a muse of technology. Human is a muse of artificial intelligence. Hi, Mike. Welcome. If you guys are just popping in, please don't forget to subscribe and to like. And let's get started with collapse. Now, it is a portal. It is a way of moving from one space into another. So this is the liminal space. I talk about it a lot this year because it's been a really huge subject. It's been a really huge topic for me personally because, I've gone through a lot of changes. I named this in December of last year, the year of refinement. And what is refinement? Refinement is taking like an ore in its natural, as it appears in the earth, and heating it up and maybe using some chemicals, but heating it up to a certain temperature. And then once it gets to that temperature, you have to watch it. Well, the ancients, that's how they used to do it with silver and copper. Rehab Gaming, welcome. Nalo, welcome. So when you're doing that refinement process, it is tempering an ore. It is tempering that, it's a process of metallurgy is a really intense process. And so when we talk about collapse, it's part of that. Like it's taking something in its raw form, maybe, it's kind of like the diamond in the rough, they say that, but I just look at it as ore that is being refined, that metallurgical process. If you are comparing it to your human form of, going through some really intense things. And, even now, as I was researching for this podcast, I'm thinking about all of the changes that our society is going through right now. As a collective society, like all of the things that we're going through are pretty intense. It's a pretty uncertain world. And right now, what I would deem our, our society as being and sitting in this liminal space. So we'll really talk about that. I'm going to break it down and why it matters and why there's beauty in it, and really address this end of the world stuff that people, kind of get sucked into. All right. So, first and foremost, thank you guys for joining. So, the first thing I want to acknowledge when it comes to collapse is the heaviness of it, okay? Collapse is not easy. It makes you feel out of control. And so we've seen the people that try to control everything, that try to control outcomes, that try to control others, that try to control everything, and it really is coming from this resistance of change. It has to be this one standard, otherwise if that standard isn't being met, then everything is not going the way that I want. When really, when these collapses happen, it's it's an invitation to you to welcome in, go past the resistance and welcome in something new. And that's what the liminal space of collapse is. So the other thing I want to say is collapse is not failure. Collapse is not failure. Collapse is breaking down something that maybe you're used to being around. Maybe it's a norm. Maybe it's been going on for a number of years. I mean, they call it the 7-year itch in marriage when you get to this point of, am I really satisfied? Is this really the life I want to live? That's the 7-year itch, is like, do I leave or do I stay? People have that. There's a term for it, 7-year itch at that time, because they're really coming into this collapse of system. Okay, is this really the direction that I want to go? So collapse is not a failure. In fact, I would dare say that collapse is a portal. So, what does that mean? That is the liminal space of something that's old into something that's new. And this has happened throughout history. So, it's not anything, it's not like a news cycle. It's not like, oh, this is novel. This has never happened before. It's happened before. And so we'll look at some some experiences of that. And the a lot of the times when I'm bringing these topics to you guys, in the podcast form, it's because I'm going through it, or I'm noticing the pings of it in my field. I have a lot of personal stories this year. Hi, Zoe. I have a lot of personal stories this year from collapse. So there's been multiple forms of collapse over this last year, and I'm not the only person. I've noticed that other people are also mentioning that they too have gone through a form of collapse, or maybe multiple collapses throughout this year. And it's not limited to this year. It seems to be a theme this year for a lot of people. And I don't know if it's because it's a snake year and that's not my snake year is not my friend, but that's for another day, I guess. So the collapses in my life, as I look back at my life, of maybe losing a job, maybe ending a long-term relationship, maybe enter leaving friendships behind. Whatever the story is, before there's a new turning point, there's been a lot of resistance from myself of trying to control the outcome, of trying to control, I don't want this to change. If it changes, I feel threatened, and when I feel threatened, that means I'm going to die. Like everything is going to, like, I'm going to cease to live. And that really is the fear response that comes from not being conditioned to accepting the collapse. So let's look at collapse. So collapse, let's define it, is when systems, either internally or externally, can no longer hold their form. Okay? They can no longer hold the container that it used to be in. So now, when it can't hold it, it just falls apart. Everything just collapses. And when that happens, our nervous system's natural response from our body experiencing all of the pings and the environment and the people around us are, the neurons are firing up into our brain, and it first enters the amygdala part of our brains, which is, located near the hippocampus, and that is where fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are like immediately triggered. And that's our natural response to anything that's overwhelming. So anything that's overwhelming, that there's a lot of things to pay attention to, it's almost like you need to have that to pause time a little bit and analyze, where do I set my attention first? What is the priority first? And how do I do that in a manner that's going to keep me safe when maybe there's a lot of overwhelming characteristics, or maybe overwhelming things happening in my field, internally or externally, right? Because both of those are our bodies interpret those as the same realities. And it can also be digitally. So digital is a relatively new thing that is invited into our nervous system as another stimuli to figure out. And I think that's why we tend to have a higher nervous system overwhelm, where we feel like we're in survival because we're constantly on, not just in our physical environment or in our internal environment. Now we have this new stimuli, this digital environment that we're also inviting into our system, that is taking away from that attention that we could be giving to things that are maybe physically real, or some sort of internal trauma that needs to be worked through. Historically and culturally, there are certain parallels. So, civilizations, rites of passage, and myths are like all infuse collapse into the story, or into their way of life, or into the rite of passage that is another liminal space. I mean, we can all agree that adolescence is a pretty harrowing experience to go through, some more than others, but it is this liminal space from being a child into being an adult, right? And that is kind of this a longer liminal space than most other ones. Now, when we look at collapse, when we look at the collapse of systems, either internally or externally, we're also looking at how we respond to it. So the most natural response to something that's falling over is to catch it so that it doesn't spill, break, whatever, right? And that's our natural response. So it takes us a little bit of practice to not grab for whatever is falling, and resisting it from breaking apart on the floor or spilling all over the floor. But resisting collapse in the context that I'm speaking of it in can actually prolong certain feelings of suffering, or certain necessary destructions that need to happen in order for things to change. Now, if you guys know how powerful words are, and you're resisting a certain change, but maybe you said, I want to be out of this life cycle that I'm in, where I just go to this job that I don't like, that I come home to a house that I don't like, and I'm existing around people that I don't necessarily want to communicate with. And so, in that cycle that you're going through, that daily cycle of going to the job you don't like, coming home to a house that doesn't feel like home, and then being around people that are draining you, that is your body telling you that you're out of alignment and that things need to change. But because of our comfort in that cycle, that we know what we're going to expect in each of those, each part of the process, each year after year, it kind of prolongs the suffering when we're like, well, this is my life. I'm not going to change it. I'm a school shy. Very nice. Well, welcome. Um, so when we look at redefining collapse and redefining it from being something that is a negative, the beauty of collapse is that some things on the other end are not necessarily what like what you could have imagined or what you could have thought they would have been, but they end up becoming something that is even more like there's more joy in it. There's more reward in it. It's new. It's exciting. It's it kind of highlights different aspects of you and makes you a little bit more multifaceted than in that mundane cycle that you were in. So let's look at collapse as a portal, just a little bit more in depth. So I think of collapse as being on a threshold. So a threshold is, the entrance of a door. So you're entering a door. It's an initiation into something new. And I think a lot of people think like end of the world, and that kind of thought process when it comes to things collapsing. They think that, oh, once it collapses, then that's the end. There's nothing else. Everything is we're going to die. That's like where our fear response goes. But instead, it is this threshold into something new. It's not a dead end. It brings you into newness by stripping away everything that was unsustainable, everything that wasn't in alignment for you, anything that wasn't in alignment for us as a society. So when we feel the collapse coming, it can trigger the nervous system a little bit, especially if there's multiple people that are feeling that end of the world, I'm going to die. And because of our entrainment, because of how our nervous systems are all connected in this network, we can sometimes feel that, especially if you're a highly sensitive person, if you're highly empathetic. You might feel the collective energy, even though you don't necessarily believe it. It happens to me all the time. I can feel the anxiety of the collective, of people around me, of my city, of the environment. I can feel the anxiety of groups of people that I'm around. I can feel their joy. I can feel their excitement. So just being really sensitive and feeling into that is something that's normal, but it can also give us this odd outlook on how things are actually going through. So when we have unsustainable structures, when we have unsustainable, let's talk about like relationships, maybe your work relationship, your profession, there's something that's not in alignment and you can feel that and you're like, man, I really want to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of it. Once you start to say those things and say, I'm going to get out of that, that's when things can kind of start to collapse. It almost like people talk about this, and I don't know if you guys agree with it, but that there is this quickening that happens at the collapse, at a collapse moment. So right before everything falls apart, there's this quickening where it's just like you almost watch the bottle fall down in slow-mo and you're like, is it going to break or not? Is it going to collapse or not? And you almost can watch it in slow-mo, but it happens so quickly. But So, relationships, belief systems, this can happen. Career paths, this can happen. Lots of people contemplate changing their career paths, especially when they get into their 40s and 50s and sometimes 60s. They're like, I want to completely change my career. Or even, you know, I'm divorcing and starting life anew. Like, this happens quite often. And then the other part, when it comes to internally, it's your sense of self can be the one that's collapsing. And, you know, and that is okay too. Like you're not going to fall away from that. So let's talk about collapse as a portal. So it is an energetic portal. All right. So collapse happens when your container can no longer hold your energy. Okay. This happened to me. I could no longer hold the energy of the the career or the business that I was in. So I had to take action to collapse it, almost just like letting it go and fall apart. Sometimes it's really difficult. Like I've had really strong connections with people and, I have such a strong connection. I don't want to let it collapse. I don't want it to go away. Okay. So at a certain point, though, it was like, okay, you just got to let it go. You got to let it go. Your energy cannot hold that any longer, and it's taking away from you. It's draining me personally when I'm trying to hold containers and keep containers together that are not in alignment for my energy. And this is true for everybody else as well. And as a collective, because this is a fractal thing that we can experience individually, but then we also experience it in a collection of people. So communities, states, countries, whatever, we can all experience things together. So we can all outgrow things that are no longer in alignment with us. Now, I've talked a lot this year about being in the liminal space, and the liminal space is kind of the space in between two things. So the space in between life and death, the space in between a former belief system and a new belief system. So it could be this former belief system and this new belief system. It could be the space between when you're like going to learn the new profession. It could be the falling away of like if you're burning off your ego, there's certain egoic traits that you're just burning off. That can feel like a liminal space, and maybe it's just a fractal, maybe it's a huge expanded amount of time, but that is what a liminal space is. So the collapse, a personal energetic collapse, puts you in this in between spot where your old identity is gone, but your new one isn't quite yet formed. Okay, so when it comes to identity, that in between of two different types of people that you might feel like might it feels weird because it's almost like you can see the old one, you can see this new one, but you quite don't embody both of those, so you're just kind of in this in between spot. Now this is where it becomes that portal. The portal is the only place where you're malleable enough to be remade. It's it's like this cycle of, I don't know. I have a hard time with, are we reincarnated? One, because obviously we have this like linear idea of life, but I feel like I've lived many lifetimes in my own life. Maybe not many is the right term, but as a young lady, I lived a certain identity, and then, over time things have changed a lot where like the core of who I am hasn't changed. There's like core values, core morals, core pieces here of me that haven't changed. However, the way that I communicate with people, the way how I communicate, how I see people. It kind of gets a little bit more refined and a little sharper. And so now I can't say that I was the same as I was a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? There's been a lot of shifting, a lot of changing of belief systems and ideas until, and as I get older, it's like, okay, just grab the wisdom and take it to the next place that we're going here. So, so when I think about that, if we're doing the cycle and let's say east is where you're born and then south is like, your youth and you can get to be older and that's the west where you're like an adult and then the north is the elder and then it goes back into the cycle. It's hard for me to say, okay, there's like that cyclical part of nature where it makes it hard for me to say, what is rebirth? What is reincarnation? So I'm not going to like sit here and try to, it's taken me a long time to, to really like figure out where I sit with reincarnation. But I can say that for sure that there is rebirth because I've experienced it multiple times on in multiple fashions. And so the space from being an elder back into this youthful energy. So where you have all the wisdom and then you die and then you go to the east where you're reborn. Like there's a spot there where there's malleability, where you can change. All right. Okay, let's move on to the myths and archetypes. So, looking at parallels and patterns of collapse, we always look at the hero's journey. The hero's journey is one of the core cool, stories. There's always a moment, though, when the hero loses everything. So, this can be known as going into the abyss. So, the hero embarks on this journey, and in that journey they lose everything and they have to go face something really difficult, and in that difficulty, in slaying the dragon, they have to go into this abyss and actually face the dragon. Okay. And then when they emerge from that hero's journey, then they can gain whatever treasure they were in. So that's what happens in these collapses. That's why it's our nature, it's our human nervous system response to resist it. However, when you learn to like acknowledge, okay, I'm in a collapse right now, this is happening, and it's going to be okay. The more that you're okay with it, the faster you can get through that cycle of that collapse in that liminal space. That's why I said sometimes it could be minutes. Sometimes it could be years where you're sitting in this collapse position. But once you're out of it, there's a treasure that is gained. Okay? It's almost like this energy is injected into you and you start to feel new. This can also be known as the rebound, right? So if you're in a long-term relationship, if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, and then after you get out of that relationship, after the cycle of whatever the daily cycle was that you go through, once you hit that rebound, once you like detach from the energy, all of a sudden you feel new. You might go to the gym a lot because you have all this energy now. You might start eating better and then it changes. You start shifting a little bit. And so there is this like treasure of energy, of, excitement, of new hobbies. My roommate's moving out right now and it makes me excited. Like I have a lot of energy. Now there's all this open space. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to take the space that I have now and reinterpret it, putting new energy into it, getting rid of a lot of stuff. Okay. Like, I want to get rid of that energy. All this is going out. I only want to have new energy. So it means redecorating. It means changing the way that the spaces are. So those kind of things you start, that's the rebound. That's this burst of energy. It's like a burst of energy treasure. Other parallels of the collapse, obviously, is the phoenix myth. So this is another one that's very popularized. So the phoenix is a death by fire that is required before the rebirth from the ashes, okay? Now, the when I said that this was the year of refinement, I don't think I quite knew in December the things that I would have to go through in calling that year of refinement. And even before my mom was diagnosed with cancer, I was calling in, not to say that I was responsible for it, right? But I was calling in energy of cleansing. I wanted to have my energy be cleaned. And so as much as that hurt going through that loss, there was this beautiful renaissance of me, of having to face certain things generationally or even personally in my own, connections in the way that I connect with people. I had to look at that differently. And so there's these refinements or this death by fire where you actually you feel like you're burning, you feel like you're dying. Heartbreak feels horrible. And then mix that with trying to go through your own personal fires. It's been a really difficult experience. However, there is beauty in it. Okay. So there's a rebirth from the ashes in that. Now, the other archetype we can look at is the Tower card in tarot. And there's this lightning strike that destroys the false structures, which is a necessary step before the star, which represents hope and clarity. So the Tower card is destroying systems. It's destroying, it could be destroying relationships. It could be destroying a career that you are holding on to. Anything that is systematic, that Tower card represents pulling it down, and then the star that comes right after that is hope and clarity. Okay. So those are some of the myth and archetypes. As far as parallels and patterns of this collapse, as we see it in storytelling and in archetypal images or anything like that. Now, historically and or culturally, civilizations have collapsed over time. I mean, I talk about the story of Inanna, who is ancient Sumerian. And so the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians are like the first civilizations that, we have any evidence of where they're bringing things down. But Rome's collapse, okay, birthed a new political and cultural form. All right, out of Rome's collapse, alleged collapse, I should say. Hi, Abigail. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Out of Rome's collapse, there was birthed new political and new cultural forms. There was a reformation that came through that. Now, it was messy and chaotic. It wasn't the easiest thing, but it was collapsed, and it did birth something new because nature abhors a vacuum. The Black Plague decimated Europe, okay, but it also opened the way for the Renaissance period. So it opened the way to this art, this science, and a real spiritual seeking people. almost enhanced them of like, oh my gosh, okay, it almost like pointed towards this feminine beauty and this spiritual beauty, which I equate with feminine energy. But if you think about that, like new art, all the buildings, the spiritual seeking people, just really wanting to be connected in that way. When the collapses happened, the Black Plague, killing a lot of people, and changing the way Europe was, it also, paved this way of something new. It rebirthed with the Renaissance. People were really focused on beauty, they were focused on science, and they were not just looking at, the like capital S science that we have, but just looking at the beauty of the numbers and how these numbers kind of were connected in a certain way. And even artists, maybe they were painting, but they had tons of different hobbies of not just I paint and that's it. They were painters, inventors, they were looking at deeper into things. So it just kind of opened this new way, this new path of seeing the world for what it is, and seeking new knowledge that they could. Many tribal initiations involve a symbolic death, okay? A collapse of the child identity, like I was saying, before the individual is welcomed back as an adult. So that rite of passage, I'm sure you've heard of it, where like, the kid comes of age, and then once they're of age, they have to take a knife, and then they have to go out and survive in the wild for a week or whatever. Okay. That's the collapse of that child identity. They have to go and kind of face themselves in this raw form. They really have to look at themselves in that. And then when they come back, then they're welcomed into, you know, the the male part of the tribe and start learning, what is it to be a male in my tribe here. And then also when we look at the medicine wheel of that, the eastern, the birth, all the way to north, which is the elder, and then, passing on and then being reborn. And my my tribe is a plains, so they have teepees, and the teepee door is always pointed to the east every time. It's always pointed to the east. And the holes aren't like you can just walk through them. You kind of have to bend down and bow down to get in and out of the teepee. And it's pointed to the west. And even when you do, what are they called? Well, anyways, all the doors are pointed that way. And it's a way that when you wake up and you exit out, you're looking east, and that is, where you're reborn. So every day you're honoring that newness, that reborn rebirth cycle. All right. Well, moving on psychologically, the ego death is one that I was mentioning before. So this is a collapse that dissolves the identity that's built around what is safe and known, and allowing a truer image to emerge. Okay, personal story. This year has been a lot of burning of ego death. So it's not just one instance of going through something. It's a constant facing of who am I and what is my true self. And I've noticed how much it's actually softened me as a person. So normally I'm like controlling, trying to make things happen, observing things, and just trying to intervene a lot. And, over the past 5 years, I've really tried to establish really strong boundaries and really honor myself and not put myself, like sacrifice my own self for others, because really every single one of us is responsible for our own lives. We're not responsible for other people's lives. Obviously, that you are responsible for your children and, certain aspects of safety. But when it comes to you and how you interact in your life, you are the author of your own story. Okay. And so these ego deaths really do, they can be really powerful. And it does allow this true image to emerge. And so, when I say that there's parts of me that have softened, there's parts of me that have shown up, there's stronger boundaries, because at the end of the day, I really did want that. That was one of my 2021, I think, is when I said, I really want clean energy. I am going to be this at a certain point. So that involved a lot of ego deaths. It involved looking at things that I was holding on to and am I going to burn this way or not? Now, the next one, so psychologically, this other one is called a somatic release. And so this is the nervous system that if you are constantly overwhelming your system, if you're constantly holding tension, there comes a point where your being just cannot hold on to it anymore. Your body's just like, I give up. This happened at a workplace for me. I was looking at the computer and I literally could not executive function to lift my arm up and put it to the keyboard. It was a literal and biological impossibility at that point. I had just let go, and there was almost this relief that came with it. So the somatic release is when you're pinpointing parts of your body and you're letting it go, and so that space is allowing you to renew yourself, allowing you to reformulate, like, what are we going to do here? And that was a scary situation for me. One of my friends, he drove his car into the bay, and he describes not the moment when he was doing it, but once it landed and it hit, it was like a final decision had been made. He describes it as being the most peaceful moment, before it was like this turning point. It was a real liminal space of everything that was occurring in his life had been relieved in that moment. Okay, so he survived it, thankfully. And it served as a really positive, strong lesson for him. Okay, so spiritual collapses, they remove what was blocking you from hearing from God or spirit or soul, source with any clarity. Okay, a collapse, it removes the noise that is keeping you from being connected to the source. Collapse clears out the idols. It clears out things that we cling to, that we identify with our worth or with even security. And if you read the Bible or you read any stories, there's a lot of stories that show where, collapses happen, and then that individual needs to redefine what their connections are. They need to look at, okay, what is important to me and what isn't. And then finally, this collapse becomes a place where you surrender, because you're now meeting the divine without defenses. So remember, we were talking about the Black Plague just a few minutes ago. What happened after the decimation of Europe? Well, the Renaissance. the Renaissance happened. And so you meet the divine there. That's, art is this connection to creativity, to the divine. And so when that opened, it was like all this brilliance that was left over in the minds of people. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about that plague anymore. Now I can focus on, things that are important to me for living in general. And so because those defenses weren't up, because their ideas and thoughts of what is security, what is my worth, kind of vanished, and they were able to look at what is meaningful to me in life. Maybe it's my family, maybe it's pursuing these hobbies, maybe it's, being really good in my career. Maybe whatever it is, the divine opens up after these collapses. It's a nice rebound. So why is this beautiful? The collapse is the most honest moment in your life. They're the most honest moments of your life. Any masks that you have fall away. Okay? It's the most honest moment of your life. So this is where you find resilience. This is where you're forced to meet yourself as you truly are. It's like every mask falls away. Hi, Jerusha. Yeah, hit the like button, y'all. Don't forget to sub. I want to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. I think I can do it. Hopefully with my new time, I can do it. That'll be cool. But good to see you, Jerush. Okay, and then another reason why it's beautiful is because the collapse is where you become available for new instruction. It's a new story. It's a new intro. It's a new you. And that can feel really refreshing, especially if you've kind of, I don't know, worn out the old one. A new perspective, a fresh perspective might feel truly amazing. Okay. Oof. Okay, 47 minutes. Okay, now let's talk about the journey of a collapse, what it looks like. So, first and foremost, you hit that initiation. Okay, something breaks, the illusion of control is cracked. Like everything is open. You drop the egg, and the egg is now splattered all over the ground. The initiation into that collapse, it has happened. Now, after the initiation, after the first initial crack, there's a little bit of disorientation. So this might be known as a dark night of the soul stage. Okay? That disorientation. You don't know which way is up. You're starting to feel all these feelings. Things are going awry. Everything feels chaotic. Everything is dark. You don't see with clarity. The disorientation is that next stage of the journey. And this is a normal part of any collapse journey. And then once you go through that dark night of the soul, then you hit to this next stage, which is a surrender stage. Now, the surrender stage is letting go of the old, letting go of the resistance, letting go of the fighting that is keeping you holding on to whatever the old thing is. And that fight to restore the fight to restore the old processes, systems, identity, all this stuff. The surrender is that letting go of that. Okay. Letting go of that resistance. Just, okay, obviously it's not serving me, doesn't feel in alignment. I'm draining myself trying to hold on to whatever this old system is. Like, I'll just let go. All right. And then after you're able to let go, then the reconstruction can happen. Okay. that emergence of a new and more aligned structure, a new and more aligned identity, a more aligned and rightfully aligned belief system, or even just system in general. I mean, we're going through this right now in our society, almost on a global scale. I'll have to think about it a little bit more, but I've been thinking about that a little bit today of, some of the things that are going on. Now, collapse is not just an initiation, it's not just disorientation, it's not just surrender, it's this whole process, but it is also this sacred teacher. And that's what really is beautiful about it. It is a sacred teacher that teaches you lessons and offers you clarity into what truly matters. Okay? It's a deep nervous system reset. Can feel really great, especially if you've been drained, especially if you don't feel seen. It could be like a hitting the reset button. I remember when I was playing Grand Theft Auto 3, Liberty City, on the radio when you're driving around doing whatever. There's one of the commercials, and it's like, life doesn't have, oh no, it's like a call-in station or whatever. The guy goes, there's no reset button on life. Well, collapse is kind of a reset button, okay? It kind of is this reset button. So, our sacred teacher, collapse, is also teaching us humility and maturity, okay? So we're going through things, and maybe it might feel humiliating to go through them. Maybe something embarrassing happened to you and you've been trying to hide it and shove it way down instead of just facing it and, being humiliated by the situation. Oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing. I feel so humiliated. Those are just emotions and feelings around something. I remember I fell for this end of the world date prediction thing when I was in my 20s. And it was really embarrassing. It was really humiliating when the day came and went and nothing happened. And that led to a huge collapse, okay? Because not only did that happen, but around the same time, my father had died, and I didn't really have a deep relationship with him. And so there was a lot of collapse happening in those moments, in that moment of time in my timeline. And so I had to go through a really deep, humiliating experience and actually feel what it felt like to feel humiliated. And nobody wants to feel that way. At least I don't. Maybe other people do. But it was hard for me to own it because I had so much ego, pride around it that it didn't feel good in my body. But over time, as I was able to address that embarrassment and address that humiliation openly and publicly and honestly, it led to maturity. Now, when I see these end of the world predictions, and it's like popping up again now, I see it and I'm just like, I've been through that. Don't believe it, people, right? So I can just say, with understanding, there's just, in my experience, in my maturity, don't believe that. All right. And then our sacred teacher, collapse, also teaches us a spiritual realignment. So instead of holding on to the ego, you get to hold on to your essence, right? Because your essence is so far better than your ego. Your ego is attached to this world, whereas your essence is detached and you're just this beautiful being that kind of just moves through life. You get to, interact with people. That's why I love traveling. I never know where my divine appointments are going to be. And I could feel my heart calling out for those divine appointments. So anytime I have this, I can feel the stirring in my soul of, I need to go do this thing. Like, people will invite me to stuff and I'm like, yes, I need to go to that. there's a divine appointment there. I need to go do this. There's a divine appointment there. And so I listen to, where are they? What is my heart telling me? What is my essence telling me? Not my ego, but what is my essence telling me? What is my soul telling me? Where are my connections? So the collapse can help become this sacred teacher to you to help point out your spiritual realignments that need to happen. And maybe this old system, this old identity, this, or maybe it's a current one. Maybe that one isn't the one you need to be in. You need to be in a higher level so that you can go meet those next divine appointments that you need to in a different timeline or in a different metaverse or whatever it is. So when we look at what is collapsing, it's not like those things that we experienced in those old identities or in those old systems that we don't learn from it, right? When it collapses, it becomes compost and it starts to feed the ground for new fertile things. So when the plague happened and Renaissance came, it like became this fertile ground, this divinely inspired art, architecture, belief systems, national systems. It was like the primer for this next phase, but that needed to happen first. Okay. Now, as somebody who's walked through a lot of collapse this year, and it's so interesting that this is, episode 40, which is definitely a teaching number. When we look at the practical tools of how do we walk through collapse, the first and foremost thing that we want to do is really just be in connection with ourselves, with nervous system care. So remembering to breathe, scanning your body and figuring out, are there pain points in my body that I am feeling right now? Like, I don't really ever have back problems. And these last 2 months, I've had a couple areas in my back that have been in a little bit of pain. And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, there's no way that I, have gone this many years without having back problems. And then all of a sudden that there's back problems when I haven't really been doing anything much different. So I have to look at the emotional and the physical things that my body is going through, or even mental gymnastics that my body is going through in the things that I've been dealing with. It's just the heaviness of the load. So you always feel it if you're carrying the world on your shoulders, or maybe you're shrinking like this because you don't want to feel seen. Maybe your breath is like shallow and because you're not taking deep breaths. And so when you're scanning your body, you're wanting to notice those things. You want to notice how you're pacing yourself. Am I pushing myself too far? Am I not pushing myself enough? Or am I in that just right sweet spot? So just really being in conscious awareness of, where is my nervous system right now? Like, I do it all the time. Like, I'll find myself not breathing deep breaths. It's just like kind of these low, shallow breaths. So when I catch myself doing that, I have to, okay, just take a really deep breath, maybe even hold it so that my body recognizes that, okay, you're able to take deep breaths. Now your nervous system can calm. Do you snore when you sleep? I don't know. I don't know. So the other thing is journaling prompts. Those are helpful. I've been writing a book, and so that has been really cathartic. So, any way that you can get that out, sometimes even just calling somebody and talking to them is a way to kind of help journal if that is the kind of connection that you want to have with somebody. Building support networks. In my research, I was really shocked to discover that isolation is like so bad for your body. And we kind of glamorize it in our society where people are like, I don't want to go out and be social with people. But then, like, there's this other class of people that are like, oh, I want to go, I want to meet with people. Isolation, if you're obviously, it's okay to be alone and be a little isolated at times. But if you're constantly isolated and it's having a negative effect on you, it's like smoking 15 packs of cigarettes a day. You could be a non-smoker. Is like just as harmful to do, to be isolated as it is smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And if you're doing both of those, then oh my goodness. What were the other ones? It was the statistics were really terrible for isolation. So building good support networks of people that you can call on, people that you can rely on. I have, obviously my mom is not there. She was a huge support network for me. And so I had to find other people that would kind of fill in for the things that I would call on her for. And which is great because it helps me to reconnect with my friends. Now, I've reconnected with one of my friends who's a nurse, and so we could just sit and chat, and then we talk about, baking and cooking, all kinds of cute stuff, and whatever, animals and gardening and everything like that. Those are the things that I would talk with my mom about, and so having that close network is important. Another way to build support networks is I love canning and preserving food, and so I set a date for people to come over and do a canned food swap at my house. So I will host them. I'll put, a charcuterie and a crudité board together and have some drinks or whatever available, and we can all sit around, chat, and trade, whatever recipes that we've canned throughout the year. And also, I will do a pressure canning workshop where I show them how to pressure can, because a lot of people, they don't know how, or they've never done it and it sounds scary, and it really isn't. And so, I set that up. I also have tamale parties every November. I'll have a tamale party. And then, even more, I'll have these dinner parties. I'll host dinner parties where it's a theme, and I'll have people come over and maybe we'll play a game. And so those things are ways that we can build support networks if we don't have those actively present in our lives. That way, when you have this deeper connection with people, when you're going through a collapse, you're not necessarily going on it alone. People are constantly checking in on you, and you're constantly checking in on people. And that's why it's nice to have connections close by. And if not, then having people by phone where you can just connect with them by phone. And then rituals are also important. I like burning Palo Santo or sage. And, for me as being indigenous, the smoke represents all the negative energy, like being taken out of me and going up to, divine source, up to God. So that fire release is helpful. Water cleansing. I take 2 to 3 Epsom salt bath soaks a week, just to kind of clean that energy out and just pause and meditate and maybe not even think about stuff. Like I just clear my mind. I listen to like a tone, or sometimes it's there's white noise, and then I like green noise. Green noise is actually a little bit more soothing for me, but there's other noises like brown noise and pink noise, and you guys can look them up. There's several channels that have them where it's like uninterrupted black screen, so you can listen to it all night. But those are other things that you can do to kind of help clear your mind of the things that you're going through, and you might need to do it for quite some time. And then the other thing is grounding practices. So I like to go hiking out to where there are waterfalls. I like to go to the beach, or even just go for a walk in my neighborhood sometimes, especially if I'm like really activated and I have a lot of energy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go like move this energy around, because the ideas are coming in, the connection to source is like really strong. And so that really is helpful. Hi, Deborah. Good thing to learn. Canning? Yes. I think any self sufficiency is good to learn, and not to take it to too much of an extreme where it's like, if I don't have this pantry full, I'm gonna die. Like, that kind of takes the joy out of knowing how to do those things. So there's a sweet spot there too. All right, we're at an hour. I can't stay much longer because I have some things I need to do. My roommate's been moving out this week, and so as he's moving out, I'm like reconstructing my space, as I mentioned earlier today. And then I have a friend coming over, so I'm got to get ready for that. But I really wanted to talk about the different stages. So we talked about the cycle of, from initiation into that spiritual alignment. And collapse is not like a one and done thing. This will happen constantly. It's just how you react. How do you handle each collapse? So stage 1, early collapses can be the biggest shocks of your life, okay? So these are the ones that might feel like it's the end of the world. It could be divorce, it could be losing a job, it could be a faith crisis, right? Burnout, identity breakdowns. Like these are all pretty huge collapses that can occur in our life. And they shake you so hard that you still might be holding on, thinking that you have this illusion of control over the situation, which like you probably don't. And the early collapses, the ones that are like the first big ones that shake you to your core, those ones are likely coming from where the nervous system is not used to the collapse process. It's not normal. It is so core shaking, and your nervous system hasn't developed on how do I learn this? How do I land this without completely falling apart? So this portal is so fear and resistance can make it feel more destructive because it's so new. It's like there's not a lot of information to kind of put into that first part of the stage. Now, in a second stage, as you're more mature, as you go through these collapses, it's more of a sacred unraveling than it is for you as a big shock, okay? Some of them can still be shocking, but now your nervous system knows how it went through these former processes or these former cycles, and now it can, go into the next one. So when you're looking at the unravelings, after you've been through a few of them, you develop a little bit more trust, and that as you mature, you know that there is going to be that your system is merely clearing space for whatever the next thing is to come. Okay? So the surrender becomes a lot easier. The letting go becomes a lot easier. The knowing that it's not the end of the world. Whereas before, in your younger collapse years, it may have felt like it was the end of the world. I remember as a teenager, I would just start crying, like tons of tears. Like I was that cry face emoji where just rivers of tears were coming out because I was so emotional. The collapses were such a shock to me, and I didn't want to let it go. But then when, as I get older, especially in this last year, I've been able to hold it together a lot better. Now, am I really good at it? Probably good at it. Am I completely immature in the process? No, not really. Like, it's still sometimes core shaking. And, the next time that it happens, it's going to be a lot easier for me. It's not going to be as extreme as the things that I've gone through this year, hopefully. I don't know if that's wood or not, but we'll pretend it is. There we go. But there comes a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I know that if I let go of this, something better is going to come my way. All right. The dark night of the soul is going to be uncomfortable, but I know that it's just clearing space for something better. Something better this way comes. And if you're going through like a burnout, you'll start to recognize when you're feeling disconnected, when there is friction, when you do feel fatigued, you'll start to notice those signs earlier, and then you can acknowledge it and then release it a lot sooner and far more gently than the big shock of those early collapses. So it kind of is like having a huge earthquake, right? And then the aftershocks are not as large as the big earthquake. All right. And then in the stage 2, your nervous system is learning how to stay regulated while in the dark. So while you're in the dark night of the soul, while you're in that disorientation feeling, because those disorientations are still going to come after the initiation. They're still going to come. There's still going to be a little bit of disorientation. Now, it does get faster because now you're able to recognize the signs, okay? Remember, we were saying fatigue, disconnection, friction, just whatever fear responses you start to have, you'll start to recognize them, and you'll be able to stay regulated in your nervous system, knowing that I don't have to stay in fear. Now I can kind of go into my higher mind thinking and react with clarity because I don't have to stay in the dark. I can come to the light. So collapse in this mature stage now becomes more like a conscious shutting and less like an explosion or a demolition. Okay. Now in stage 3, where hopefully I'll be, you have these elegant collapses. Okay. This is where you get to have chosen deaths of things. So when you get to this stage, it's where collapse is a tool that you use with intention, okay? There's intentionality of collapsing things. It's and it's not to say that I've not been in this like elegant collapse before, but I would say I'm still in stage 2. Stage 3 for some things. So in relationships, I can know if I'm in a relationship and it's out of alignment, then I use the tools to intentionally collapse it and say, you know what, this is not in alignment with me and it's not in alignment with you. We're not on the same page. We're out of alignment. We don't desire the same things. Like long term, this is not going to work. So, in that elegant collapse, you can willingly dismantle things that no longer serve you before the container just breaks on its own. So, you can just pour it out instead of like being forced to like break it apart, okay? And then finally, you begin to lead others through their own collapses, and you can hold their space with a lot of compassion and with a lot of confidence. And so, yeah, in that aspect, I could probably hold a lot of people, especially if they're in that stage 1. Say, I know you're in the stage 1. It's completely normal. Everything's going to be okay. You just need to keep your nervous system regulated. Keep scanning your body. Don't let it get so bad that it goes to this extreme and then your body starts to pay for it physically. You're because we have these points. I think we kind of get this ping from spirit, from the divine, of like something's not right. And sometimes our ego is like, oh, whatever, like so we keep on doing it in a rebellious way, even though like spiritually we're like, that's not right. Then it goes into your mind. Your mind starts like kind of processing it of, that's not right. That goes against your morals. It goes against your values. It goes against who you are. It goes against your essence. Don't feed your ego. And sometimes we can ignore that too by, oh, no, I'm going to choose my ego in this moment. And eventually it'll come into your emotions. You'll start having these emotional reactions. And so your body is telling you emotionally, this thing is going on. You need to clean it up. You need to address this. And a lot of the times, if you're very controlling, you can start to push those emotions down. I don't need to deal with you. I don't want to deal with you, so I'm just going to go to work all the time. I don't want to deal with you, so I'm going to drink. I don't want to deal with you, so I'm going to do these drugs. I don't want to deal with you, so I'm going to get into in these relationships where, I can project onto the partner. I can get into these friend groups where the friends are the victims, or family, or whomever it is, whatever the connection is that your addiction to is numbing the emotions that you're experiencing. And then it starts to hit your body. Then you start to get the body pains. Allegedly, I think that happens. So before all that happens, though, if you have somebody that's able to mentor you through your collapses, then it becomes a lot easier for you to go through those. Now, some people are going to have to experience the things because they're just here to experience the things, and they have to. And I happen to be one of those people. That's typically up into around your 30s, thank goodness. But it is something where even though somebody could tell you all the things, all the right ways to do things, whatever, sometimes you just have to go through that. But if you can help it, it's nice to have somebody that has a little bit of experience and is able to point the things out and help you along so that you can focus on the things that you need to. So, as you can see in all these 3 stages of collapse, it doesn't matter what stage, collapse is going to visit you at some point in time. It's just part of life. And it's how we navigate those collapses. What do we learn? What are we gleaning from it? Because it is a beautiful teacher. It is a very sacred teacher to do that. So it goes from terror, okay, something shocks the system, to initiation, and then to mastery. How well can you master it? And then it becomes less of a life crisis and more of a life practice as you get into these, the stage 2 and stage 3. It's a little bit more ingrained into your system. Your nervous system learns how to react to it, and it makes the collapses a little bit easier. Now, the huge question that I asked is, like, I can just sense as a highly sensitive person that people are feeling deeply and experiencing this big shock form of like the end of the world. I see it in social media all the time. I see it in reels. And so my question is, like, are we experiencing a collectively, not just on an individual basis, but collectively, are we experiencing a collapse? And so there is a collective collapse cycle that happens, and it could be, the destruction of Jerusalem, it could be the destruction of Rome, it could be, the destruction of these big belief systems, even in the relationship with the American Revolution or even the French Revolution. These are all collapses that happened, or the fall of the czars in Russia. These are all old systems that crumbled because it couldn't be contained, okay? So political trust, our old systems right now, there is a collapse of these old systems. They're crumbling of political trust, financial systems, religious structures, and even how we approach career or work. Those are all cracking right now. And that's why people are like, we notice that the sky is falling, and there's cracks, there's evidence that this is occurring. And from what I could tell, it is a part of this is introducing the digital technology into our society. It is quickly reconstructing the way that we approach life. As I mentioned early on in my digital age investigation, early on in this podcast, in my digital age investigation, the introduction of this technology into our lives has accelerated the collapse. So the information is spreading so fast that now we see where all the cracks are, one. And two, our nervous systems are like tuning in to the devices that are around us, okay? Basically, what I discovered was the AI and technology are essentially a synthetic nervous system that we're able to entrain with as well. All right. And that's why people get burnt out really easily. They get digital fatigue, digital burnout, and a lot of people don't even notice. They don't even know it. A lot of people don't even read like the warnings on a cell phone or the warnings on a laptop or any device. They're not reading the warnings that are on it because the interaction that you have with video games, with these devices, it is connecting into you. They use rare earth elements that mimic our bone structure, okay? And our bones hold all of our memories they hold the isotopes of the places that we live. They pick up different things from different environments. Like our bones are designed to pull that information in, all those, I don't know if I want to call them elements, minerals at least. It pulls all of that into our bodies, and our bodies are using that information to like reveal things about our surroundings. And so when I say that not only do we have this physical environment and our internal environment that we're operating in, we also have this digital environment that we're operating in. And we are just as entrained, because imagine yourself as just your nervous system is a Wi-Fi. And now it's like dialing into all these devices that are around us. So yes, especially if you're highly sensitive and you're feeling that, you can see that. So when we feel and sense that the old systems are crumbling, it's because there is a collective collapse that is happening, because there is this old analog that is getting replaced with a digital replacement, essentially. Now, the other thing that's happening, so first, old systems are crumbling, and then second, nervous systems are overloaded. So we're hyper connected, and I think the thing that I notice and that I see, and maybe other people do as well, is that we're also under resourced emotionally. Okay. We're so like, we can be so plugged into whatever metaverse we're into. If it's, some people might be interested in video gaming, some people might be interested in, constantly being on social media, whatever it is digitally. we can get hyper connected into it and plug into that. But if we don't unplug and really just be present in our own bodies, we can be under resourced emotionally because we're not feeling our emotions. Okay? We have to have those quiet moments for the silence to reveal those things. Okay? And those are like kind of planned reboots, you could say, planned personal reboots. So the nervous system is also overloaded by having this global news. Like, it used to be just in our own towns, and I've been watching the Gilded Age, and even having the newspaper delivered was kind of exciting. You're like, okay, what's going on in my region? What's going on in my state? All right. So you have this global news, and now it's like you can get it instantly on the internet. And then there's social media. Now you can see what's going on in people's personal lives as well. So, because of that connection and our connection to our devices, we're collectively feeling the whole world at once. And that is an overwhelm to our system. And then, because of this nervous system overwhelm, that is also what kind of creates the sense of doom. So, unless you're actively tuning into your nervous system, clearing everything out, getting into rest and digest, repair, and regenerate, the sense of doom is going to be there because your survival mechanisms are going haywire. They're on red alert. If you're in a chronic nervous system state, you're going to sense the collapses. They're going to show themselves up everywhere because you're on high alert for those things. Now, if you want to be alerting to all of the things that are going wrong in life, you can certainly find it. And our bodies are designed in a way that if it was equally the amount of positive and negative, and it was equal, immediately we go to the negative first. We don't look at the positive all the time. So it really is this rewiring of what do we pay attention to? Do we pay attention to the negative, which is where our minds will naturally go? We'll obviously see all the things that are wrong with stuff. So being in active gratitude is is actually rewiring your brain biologically to see what's positive. What is positive that's going on in my life? Okay? Not to say that things don't collapse and that things don't fall apart and that, extremely traumatic things don't happen. Like, those things do happen, but it really is, where am I focusing my attention? Because your attention is the most valuable currency, far greater than money. There would be no money if we didn't pay attention to it, right? We would find other things of value. Good night, Mike. All right. So, we can feel this sense of doom. So, if collapses are happening everywhere and we're just tuning into those things, then, yep, that's going to happen. It's because it's always happening. But it really is, let's rewire into gratitude. Just be really conscious of gratitude. Finally, I always like to include my mythic moments in these. So, in a collective collapse, this is not the first time it's happened, but cultures throughout history have always had this end of the world narrative that marked the end of one age and the birth of another. Okay. So, in an essence, if we're collectively collapsing, oh, hi, Tyler. Good to see you. If we are collectively collapsing, then we're in this collective liminal age shift, okay? And it can be, we can like identify it as going from this industrial age into this digital age, all right? Or a digital AI age. And some people want to say it's the Piscean age into Aquarian age. I think it's a little bit more likely that it's going from this industrial into this digital age shift, okay? And then it may feel apocalyptic because you're watching this collective identity collapse. All right. What does that mean? So apocalyptic is like, it's a little revealing of what's going on. We can see the collapse. That's what the apocalyptic feeling is this truth reveal. And you're watching a collective identity collapse. I mean, look at, like, I don't want to make it super political, but look at the Charlie Kirk thing. That happened, and I didn't respond in for either side. Obviously, I don't condone that. But I watched both sides kind of have their nervous system react in a survival mechanism on both ends. Life with Nabel. Hi, how are you? I'm doing good. I'm actually going to be wrapping up here soon. I have a friend visiting. We're talking about collapses. I'm from the USA. So it can feel apocalyptic because we are watching this collective identity dissolve. And part of that is this industrial analog side evolve. Pakistan, nice to meet you. Oh, thank you. So the collective identity is dissolving. The analog systems that we used to have are dissolving, and we're like merging into this new digital technology focused new system. Okay. Oh, thank you. So why does this matter? Now, if we're looking at Rome, what happened when Rome collapsed? I'm sure that was the end of the world for them. The destruction of Jerusalem, that was the end of the world for them. As they're going through that, there was warnings of, this is going to happen. So, but why does this collective collapse matter? So it's forcing us to rethink. Now, for some of us, we might be in that stage one feeling, and that's why you're seeing these explosions of both sides happen, and like just unconscious bias of both sides reacting to certain news. Okay. But when we go through this collective collapse, it forces us to rethink of what is true. What is going on beyond the propaganda? What is true in this moment? Then it looks at what is valuable. What is valuable beyond consumption? What is valuable? Okay. And then, because we're kind of moving into this AI technologies, what is human? So, in a time of AI and new automation techniques of programming, what is it to be human? Okay. So, just like a personal collapse is a portal, it is a sacred teacher teaching you the truth of a situation. Just like it's that, the collapse, the collective collapse is a portal for humanity. It's a portal for us it's an invite. Remember, it's an initiation first. It's an invite into a wiser and more integrated society. And that really is what's on the other end of it. I think AI is a future spy buddy. Well, AI is a small portion of, what is going on right now. You can be in that stage one, which is where the big explosion happens, or you can be in stage two, where you're having a more mature response to what is a collapse. And as a collective collapse, we need to decide, like, okay, how are we going to manage this? Because it's not going to be a fast experience. We're already in the liminal space of moving from one system into another. Oh, thank you, Nabel. I am single. But so remember that these collapses are a portal to the new system. And so if we're looking at this in the what can we be grateful for is everybody has access to, most everybody has access to electricity. There's a higher standard of living, even though it might feel like a low standard of living to have electricity and running water and plumbing and air conditioning, like all of these things, even 100 years ago, were unheard of. I mean, people had electricity, but it was very different. We're going into this new society. So we can birth a wiser and integrated society if we start to rethink of how do we want to go through this collective collapse. How do we want to do that? Now, the beauty hidden in the collective collapse is more people will wake up, even though it might feel painful. Okay, it was very painful for me to go through the refinement that I did personally this year. Collapses aren't easy. Dark Night of the Souls are not easy. Losing things that you love is not easy. Losing things that feel normal to you is not easy. And healing is ugly. Healing hurts, but after you're done, like you have this renewed sense of self. So, the other beauty that's hidden in this collective collapse is that awareness is spreading. People are more aware. Remember, after the plague, the Renaissance happened. You had this new divinely inspired art, architecture, a whole new world. The other beauty of this collapse is that new paradigms are forming. Okay, so regenerative economics, decentralized networks, new spiritual movements, these are all seedlings that are sprouting. People are finding new ways to have community. People are finding new ways to gather together, to support one another, to seek meaning together. So when you have this shared vulnerability, like we're going through collectively in this collapse, when you have that, it creates new communities. And so you'll start to see new communities forming. My name is Amelie, and I am the host of Celestic Intelligence. Thank you. All right. Um, so there is a beauty in the collapse. And, obviously, wherever God wants me to go, I'm willing to go there. But it would be nice to have a little bit of relief, a little bit of like, okay, here's where you're going. You don't have to fall apart anymore. You can be in that reconstruction period. So now I'm like entering this reconstruction period of, okay, where am I going? And the beauty of it is throughout this whole year, I've been refined, really been broken down. And now it's softened my heart so much that I'm like, oh, okay, my heart is more open now after this refinement, after the things that I've gone through this year. My heart is more open now with stronger boundaries now that I can be vulnerable and still feel safe. It's not being vulnerable and just like opening yourself up to the wolves or like descending down like Anana did, descending down into the underworld and then hanging while being humiliated by the beings down in the underworld. Okay. The vulnerability is being open and saying, hey, I went through this and it's okay. You can make it through it too. It's really kind of spearheading that thing. Tell me you are real. You are not AI. I am very much real. Who is it beating for? Yeah, my Instagram is in my description. So, yes, things might feel like the end. Collectively, it's not the end of the world, it's the end of the world as we know it. And yeah, it is painful, but there's also something beautiful on the other end that we can't even imagine in our minds of how beautiful it might be. So the massive collective initiation is is big. It is big. If we meet it consciously instead of numbing out or fighting to restore this old world, we get to co-create with what comes next. And so that's where, when we start to show up in our own nervous systems, when we start to show up as who we are, who we connect with, building these really strong communities, that we can have even deeper meanings and have an even more rich life. Okay. Okay. I think that is going to end it. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please follow me. Please sub to my channel. Don't forget to like and go to my other channels. If you guys want to support me, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account that you can go and support me there if you feel led to do that. I also have a book coming out called The $8 Truth, Exposing a $380 billion lie, about nervous system regulation and leadership development. And so if you want to support me there, it's pre-order. It launches October 8th, and it is only $5 for pre-order, and that is going to be an ebook. Good night. Please stay 5 minutes. But I do, but how? I need another way. Need another way for what? Tell me education. I have ton, like this is episode 40, so Nabel, I have so many videos that you're welcome to go and check out. I will likely be on, today is Tuesday. I'll probably be on Thursday or Friday. I'm going to do a stream on the digital age investigation and I'm just going to be outlining things of what happens after death to your social media account, just to your digital presence online, and just kind of talking a little bit about that. I've been kind of led to have a little bit of discussion there. I am going to be 42 next month. So if you guys feel led to do that, please go do so. If not, just please help me get to, I'm trying to get to 1,000 follow or subs by the end of the year. So if you guys could share my podcast with people that you think might be interested in the conversations, I would appreciate that. That helps out a lot. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. So I'll post when I go on next, which will probably be Thursday evening or maybe Friday during the day. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. It's been an interesting change. I usually go on in the mornings and I really like mornings, but this is fun. Jerusha, thank you for coming. My Instagram is at Celestic Intelligence, and it should be in my main channel. There's a link there. Good to see you, Tyler. I'm so glad we got to hang out. My birthday is on October 24th. But yeah, I hope you guys had a wonderful evening. I will chat with you later. I gotta go. My friend is coming over, and so I got to get ready for that. But I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Bye.